he's so convincing up to the last moment. You're like, he might actually do it.
He might pull the trigger. Who knows? Should that have taken more time in the first book? Because then again, that's a huge complaint to the Stormlight Archive, that the first book spends too much time world building.
Yeah, who is not upset with that? But I was, the whole time I was like, yeah, Pierce Brown, I get it. Like, this is a great twist in a story, but I don't know if I'm buying this. Welcome to Next Chapter. I'm Marty and this is Jaden, and we are doing a live conversation, a live booktube book conversation.
This is the book club. This is it.
So
it's something we wanted to do, I think, for a little while now, is to kind of present a book club and show what this would be like in a live setting. Because I know the comments have been a great way so far to have that interaction, but now we can do it live. So if you have any thoughts, that's what we're here for. I'd love to see that in the comments section as we go, but we'll just have a lot of cool stuff to talk about, so we're excited.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. I want to hear all of your craziest comments because this was a crazy series. We were talking about the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown, and these books are something else, just something completely
they're highly
different.
touted, so the excitement was high even when we first started these books. It was one of those that we were going to start right as soon as we started the podcast. We knew we were going to do it.
Yeah, we had to because everyone was talking about it. And I think the biggest supporters I was hearing from it was Tudor Ramble. Yes, for Austin specifically, right?
Yeah.
And it is funny that you mentioned that because I do have to say this. I was shocked because Richard gave this a super low score for the very first book.
Yeah.
You see that? He gave it like a 6 out of 10.
It was something around there, 6.5 maybe.
I was like, man, that doesn't even get a recommendation from us if it's that low. Like,
it was surprising. So it's not for everyone, I guess, but it's something that, I don't know, we both have loved. I know we've been itching to have this conversation for a while, so should we dive right into it?
Yeah, let's get into it. So just so you know, there will be lots of spoilers. So if you haven't read the series, unfortunately, you need to go read it first, then jump in.
Or if you're not planning to and you just want a fun conversation.
If you're not planning to,
taste of it.
What are you doing?
Some people are okay with a taste of an entire book's plot before they even read it.
I know, but
it's true.
Would you say, though, one of the major draws of this book is just how, like the crazy twists and turns. It is just so unexpected. Everything is just out of this world.
And it's fast paced. So when you say like the twists and turns, they're happening right after each other. Like they just skip boring parts completely.
Yeah, they're like that's boring.
Multiple I think multi-year jumps that happen throughout. It's crazy.
It is crazy. It's crazy. So it was great. So let's jump right into Red Rising
Book 1
first. Book 1. We'll kind of jump around a bit, but we'll start with this.
Is there a name for the trilogy, or is it just the Red Rising? Because some of them, like Stormlight Archive, we always call it Way of Kings. It's actually called the Stormlight Archive.
That was a mistake.
We've gone through that. We've made our peace with that. But
roasted in the comments.
So this is just the Red Rising trilogy, though, right? I assume.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's what I assume, right?
So when we say Red Rising, it's also the Red Rising trilogy.
I don't know what the next trilogy is going to be called, but because there's 2 trilogies of this thing, from what I believe. So in the comments, if you know, let us know what the second trilogy is called. Love to know about it.
And I love, we've already got a couple of things in the comments. I absolutely love that. The whole reason we're doing this live for people who are just joining us is so we can participate with you guys, show your comments, talk about what you guys are talking about, what you guys are thinking about the book. We have our thoughts, obviously, and we love to share them. That's why we're here. But we really want to hear what you guys have thought, too, and interact with that. So drop everything you can think of in the comment section, and we will roll with it. But I do think one thing that's cool, people are finishing the series just recently, which is awesome. Congrats. See someone say, literally just finished the series 3 days ago. That's fantastic.
3 days ago. Oh, my gosh. I love this conversation. I think Jaden finished just recently, too. I finished like a week before him, I think.
Yeah.
I was on to the next
I took my time. I did, especially in between the books. I took a little bit of a break, so that's my story.
And here's the thing is, like, how can you not jump into the third book right after finishing that second book? The craziest finish ever. I had this conversation with Jaden. He finishes that. I finished the second book, and I'm like, Jaden, we can't go back to any other book before we read that third book, because that book was just so good.
Yeah.
And he replied immediately. He's like, why? And I'm like, you clearly have not finished the book.
It's the end of the book. It's the end of the book. That's the you have to read the next one.
Yeah,
if you don't get quite to the end, it's like a regular series on TV.
Oh,
if you
yeah.
don't get quite to the end, you're not as amped about starting.
It is the biggest cliffhanger of all time. Can you imagine having to wait years for that?
A lot of people do. A lot of people do.
Oh, that'd be awful. It'd be awful. So yeah, let's jump into that. So the first book, Red Rising. So the first thing that I noticed from these books, and I was actually talking to my dad about this, I become a brand champion of books. As soon as I start, like as soon as I find a book that I love, everyone has to read it.
Most
Everyone
of the
that
books
I know.
that I've read are because you've recommended them. So.
I know. And you've enjoyed them though, right?
I have.
Worth it?
I think so. I mean, this series in particular, absolutely one of my favorites.
Yeah.
It's true. I think both of us are on the same page there for sure.
Yeah. So the big thing was I was actually talking to my dad because he just finished the first book, and he was saying the same thing as me. The first thing you notice is Pierce Brown just has a really beautiful writing style.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I've heard some people say like that he needs to be polished and it's his very first book and it's obvious. To me, though, it felt very poetic. And it did feel like he was trying at times, but I still loved it. I was eating it up. I understood Darrow's love for his wife, Io, so much from that. I just thought it was so powerful. I'm going to choke up right now.
The emotional
so
impact.
So powerful.
Yep.
So I don't know. Did you feel that same way about...
I think partially. Honestly, I would say one of the things that I didn't like as much was the prose because...
Really?
Points,
you didn't like the prose?
At points, I did not like it as much. I think some of the like statements and dialogue felt a little bit weird, especially because he tends to write it so quick, but then he's also spending a little bit too long in some of the dialogue sections. I almost think of it like a movie because you have to. It's basically a movie, okay?
They read like a movie, don't they?
It does.
It's gonna
Some
make
of those scenes are just a little bit too long, and I feel like maybe like you said, where it was a little bit forced. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes maybe it felt like that was happening too much, and it was really throwing me off. But that was one of those things.
Yep. So, anyways, I thought that was really great. The other thing is it goes straight in from his love for Io, and then all of a sudden, that relationship is over. Like she dies. Probably one of the craziest twists and turns for a book or in any moment in a book right off the bat, right from the very beginning of a series.
Yeah.
It is just emotional, powerful, and crazy. I don't know if it did rock you the same way.
It was so a lot of people hype up the second book over the first book.
Yeah.
For that reason, there's more impact, just everything dialed up to 11. I don't know if I felt that same way.
Yeah, about the second book.
About the second book.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like that dialogue was a little bit, not the dialogue, the I guess dichotomy, but the difference between the two was one of those things that really threw me off.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I thought those moments were just crazy and super powerful, and it just makes you want to read more. And the thing is about this book is it starts in such a completely different place. So you start off and you're like, okay, it's your typical dystopian book, and you have a world where there's different classes and there's a whole different world, and they're being punished, or not punished, but just living in such a hard world, and it's so sad, and it just seems like your normal book. And then all of a sudden it starts going down a road where Io's like, hey, you've got to make a difference. You're the kind of person that everyone looks up to. And then it just takes that drastic turn of oh no, she's not doing what I think she's going to be doing. Yeah. And then it just keeps going, and you're like, she's really going there? I'm a cyclist. I like riding my bike, and I actually listen to audiobooks while I ride my bike sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. But it is moments like these that they're so intense, I actually ride my bike harder and faster and get more in the zone. And when Io starts singing that song, I am just jaw dropped on my bike, just what in the world is happening here?
Did it make you ride harder, or did it make you stop?
harder until my bike tire flattened. It flattened that day, and it was the absolute worst timing. But
yeah, that moment, I think the way that he threw those twists in, you're like, no way. This is going to be one of the love stories throughout the course of the entire book. There's no way that's going to happen. And ends.
It just ends.
Whoa.
It just ends.
So that's right at the beginning, and I think that's a crazy moment to talk about for sure. I think honestly, we're not the only ones. So
yeah, I really love what do you see what Carson is saying there?
I'm seeing what some I guess is saying. EO had dead written all over the whole time.
Right from the beginning, right? That is awesome.
We can't win them all, but
you are entitled to be wrong. I love it. Yeah, I love what Carson says here. He's like, I think I'm going to take a bit of a break before reading the second part of the series. I think I was struggling to stay emotionally invested in the third book.
Oh, man.
But I totally get it. Like after reading either of these like books, they are so emotionally powerful that like you do have to take a break. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
You're like, what kind of whirlwind did I just go through?
Yeah,
it is crazy. It is really crazy. Any other cool comments you saw in there that you wanted to point out?
I know. I'm like reading these and it's like I'm trying to decide if I'm too distracted by reading the comments. But I love these. Honestly, this is one I didn't even know, so I'm gonna highlight that one too. Wait, where'd it go? I saw it. Oh, this one. I did not know that the second series is called the Iron Gold Tetralogy.
Tetralogy?
4 books, I assume. Tetra?
Okay.
Is that what that means? I think that's what that means.
Don't know, but it makes sense.
Iron Gold is like, I mean, it gets me a little bit excited.
Oh,
Hearing Iron Gold, I mean, that's going to be good.
It sounds pretty epic. Okay, cool.
There's some great comments. I kind of want to just go through.
Yeah. Are there any others you want to highlight?
Red Rising Saga. Honestly, the longer comments, I tried to set this up so that I could play the comments on top of the stream.
Yeah.
And it's
this is a learning experience.
Don't fit. So I'm gonna read them off, and you just get the beginning. I'm sorry. I tried my best.
We promise this will get better as we go.
I will fix this. But it says it's all connected. It's all the Red Rising Saga. The following 4 books are just 10 years later. 10 years later.
10 years. Wow. Interesting.
That is an interesting setting because a lot will have changed in 10 years. Okay.
That means.
I mean, can we just go straight to the final spoiler in the book?
I know, right?
something very interesting will happen in 10 years because
which directly relates to will the person's gonna be 10 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That person, whoever that is.
Who is that? Who knows? Oh yeah.
Some people didn't like the speed though. It says one of my problems with the book is it's too fast. Hectic pace.
So I would actually agree with this. So the first book I thought was paced pretty well.
Yeah.
The second book, for some reason, okay, the whole internet, for some reason, all of you commenters are totally going to agree with this because everyone does. They've been saying that the first book was widely considered the weakest in the series. I actually disagree with this. For some reason, that first book was my favorite of the series. I loved the first book compared to the rest of the trilogy. And did you feel the same way? Favorite in the series?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
I would agree.
It was just so good. The second one for me is where it had that pacing problem. The second book was just so fast. I kind of felt like I needed to catch my breath while going through it. It was just happening one after another. Okay, they're going through the Civil War moment. Okay, now they're going to invade a planet and they're going to go pick up Lauren, and then they come back and they're going to attack Mars, and like it was just like one after another another.
Everything was happening.
Yeah, I'm like, I just wanted a break to just step back and world build a little bit, take a breather, maybe have a little bit more of a political plays in there.
A lot of people had thoughts about the world building in general. Like you said, there wasn't enough time spent on it.
Yeah.
Like, do you think they go into it so fast, they get into the plot points so fast? Should that have taken more time in the first book? Because then again, that's a huge complaint to the Stormlight Archive, that the first book spends too much time world building.
It is the opposite complaint of usually what I'm saying is like, wow, they usually spent too much time world building and then I didn't get enough story. But this is like, I've never had that issue before. This is the first book where I had that issue where I'm like, too much not enough world building. But I just kind of realized from this book that the reason why you want that is because it slows it down so you can process it and feel it a little bit more. And this book, while it is good at politics and everything, I think you could have had a lot cooler of political interactions if you slowed it down.
I agree. Do you think that has a lot to do with people's individual, like, reading pace? Like, because think about it. We read it pretty fast. because we have like the podcast. We got, we're a little bit more motivated to read.
That's true.
Do you think your own reading pace affects how fast you feel like the plot goes?
It's a great question because we basically blew through these books in 3 to 4 weeks.
We did.
It was like one book a week, and man, that was exhausting. Like, cause I was like listening to every minute I got so I could get ready for the podcast. But I do wonder if like that impacted how I felt it was fast because I was literally reading it fast. But then again, there are people who go through like 100 books in a year. That's like 2 books a week. Like, and I'm complaining about one book like a week.
Okay, that means it's time for a side conversation because there's no freaking way that these people are actually reading 100, 200 books in a. It's ridiculous. It drives me crazy when I always watch those videos because every time it's so clickbaity. But they're like, I read 84 books this year. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way you remember anything from the plot of the 38th book that you read. It really drives me up a wall, but they still get me with the clickbait, and I don't know how to feel about it. It's one of those things for me. I don't know. I don't know if you have any thoughts about it. Maybe you read a ton of books every year.
Well, I will say I was listening to Vera on her podcast about hitting, I think, 5,000 subscribers. She was at 7,000 by the time.
She's like 10,000.
She's on fire, by the way. She is killing it.
That was a super fun collab.
Yeah,
if you haven't seen it yet, go check that one out. That was a blast.
But she talks about how she was read so much when she was growing up.
Yeah.
And I think she said she would read 100 pages of book a day. And that's when it just hit me. I'm like, okay, that is the reason why people get good at reading and they're able to read fast. Is because they're practiced. It literally takes practice. Like, you can read all these books on how to read faster and everything, and like that's fine. But if you're not putting in like the practice to read faster, then you're never going to be able to do it. I talk about this to my wife Malia all the time, and this is when I would love to set aside time every morning. Like, maybe I just need to set aside an hour to just read in the morning so I can get better at it, so I can read faster. But the problem is I don't have enough time in the day. That's a whole nother side conversation. But
this used to be your full-time job, Marty. Come on.
I know. It feels like it is. I'm going through so many books. But the moral of the story is here that I think I'd be able to read faster if I read more. And I want to read more is because I get jealous when I'm watching like the news or when I see somebody do an interview and they say, I read your book before doing this interview.
Oh.
And they are able to do that because they can blow through a book in a couple days.
Most of those people don't.
You don't think so?
No.
Okay, well, see, there it is.
Most of those people have assistants who write up like summaries of the books and key points, key questions to ask.
Well, I promise you.
Depends on the person.
Okay, let's take away the interview aspect of it. Okay. Though. There are people, I promise you, that are like, okay, there's this major event in the world going on right now. I'm going to read a book on it instead of like an article. And they're able to blow through it in a few days. Like, how helpful, how much more knowledgeable about the world would you be if you're able to read that fast? Yeah. But
I think it depends. Well, I'm saying it's like people, it's funny when people are like, oh, you should read books because, you can't trust what's on the internet. Like, technically, you can publish anything you want to in a book as well. Like, whether it's nonfiction or fiction. So, I don't know. That's one of those things. I'm gonna let that one go. Because I do want to get back to this. I'm seeing a lot of love in the chat for the second series.
Ooh.
And it's like, do we have to go straight to it's going to be difficult.
We may have to get there, right?
Okay, so it looks like the books are, again, this is like Iron Gold, Dark Age, Lightbringer, and Red God will be released next year. So...
Whoa. Did he say 3 books gets released next year?
No. Red God will be released next year,
okay,
which is the 4th one, if I'm reading this correctly. And it looks like... Okay, I'm trying to find it now. They all moved up by 1. Everyone's saying only surpassed by Lightbringer is better than Golden Sun. Dark Age is number 1. All of these are from the second series. And I'm like,
Those are his favorite books, you're saying?
Is the volume better? Sorry, it sounds like the volume went down. I tried to fix it. It looked like it was going too loud and peaking, so I turned it down, and now it's like...
It's probably me.
Is it better now?
I get really excited.
Hopefully. And whatever. We'll figure it out.
This is our first stream, and we would love to keep doing this with other books, and we're planning on it too. So
it's more fun, I think, and I think we'll get better at kind of the back and forth with the chat as well, because it's it's a process. But this is what we want to be doing for some of the bigger books. Like, I would love to do a book club like this for... Oathbringer, for Rhythm of War, and honestly, For Wind and Truth.
Wind and Truth, dude. This is gonna. I think we are playing. If this goes well, we will totally plan on doing this live.
Yep.
So I think that'll be lots of fun.
Doing it live.
I'm doing it live. Oh man, I just saw someone's
See, it's
comment.
difficult.
I know.
The comments are so good, and you're like, have something in your mind.
I know it.
Go ahead. I can try and post it.
I was gonna say we probably need to bring someone in to read through the comments for us, and then just say like
nice.
Highlight comments for us and say, hey, you should read this and stuff. That would probably help.
Here we go. Someone's biding their time for the Wind and Truth stream.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, me too. Me too.
Thanks, Carson.
So, but this person, Bruce Boehner's girlfriend, says, "Golden Sun made me cry. LOL. Darrow's conversation with his mom was so emotional." That was probably the most emotional scene I have ever had in a book for me.
Really?
It was.
There are some emotional scenes you're pushing out of the way for that.
No, I would take my lunch break for work and I would listen to this book. And that one, I'm like, I cannot be in office for this part.
Wow.
I was just sitting there.
Excuse me. See you later.
Yeah,
I'll be back.
Because I was just sitting there in my car, eating my salad and chicken, and just sitting there and just like, woo! Like, this is nuts.
Just taking a moment. Just taking a moment.
I don't know. Did it not hit you as powerfully?
It hits pretty powerful. It does.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that like, it is so real and so raw, and you're like, oh my goodness, like this is crazy. Like there were a couple of those though, honestly, in the series overall that you were just like, that's great. Like threw me for a loop, makes you sit down for a second. Sometimes you pause the book. There were a couple other times when I was like, I had a certain chunk of time to read the book. What was an example? Oh my goodness, when he was with I'm thinking it was Tactus. They were trying to find Tactus in Lauren's like compound.
Oh yeah.
They were trying to find him. They finally got to him when he was like with all the kids.
Yep.
At that moment, it was like, probably 11:30 p.m. for me. And I was like, I have to know what happens, and I don't know if I can take it if it goes one way or the other. So I'm like, I'm pausing it, I'm going to bed, and I'm tackling this in the morning.
Yep.
There's no way I can emotionally handle this scene until the light of day.
Yeah.
Because there were times like that where I had to pause. I was like, nope, absolutely not.
Oh my gosh. I love that. And have you ever read a book that is more emotionally charged? Would you say that this is the most emotionally charged book that you've ever read?
It could definitely be. I mean, obviously I'm putting it against things like Words of Radiance.
Yeah, Words of Radiance is up there.
But I would say, yeah, I think there are more emotional moments where you're like, I don't know which way this is going to go, and it could tear your heartstrings either way. That is brutal.
Oh, yeah.
Because during that, again, I'm thinking about that scene, but during that scene, I'm like...
Is this the Tactus scene?
Yeah, Tactus is the bad guy. You got Lauren and Darrow. But it's like,
yeah.
You don't know, like, Darrow could just be straight up lying to him. He could go ahead and do it anyway. Like, Lauren could kill him. Like,
yep.
It could go, in the way the author wrote it, could go literally any direction. And man, I couldn't do it.
I know.
I gave it 12 hours.
But how powerful was it that he gave him the opportunity to be forgiven? And he's like, and he takes it. He's going to take it.
Let me hit you with one of these questions then. This is one of the key questions that I've been wanting to ask you since we started reading these books.
Okay.
Is his, like, I'm going to say humanity or his mercy, right?
Yeah.
How many people died versus how many people did he, like, save because of that? Because I think about a couple of scenes. I'll give you one example. When they, Severo, all the Howlers and him come out of the water.
Yeah.
And then there's a little girl on the bank, and Severo's like, blast her. And he's like, no, no, no. And she activates the EMP.
Oh,
and
yeah,
most of his people die.
Uh-huh.
You're like, man, there's a trade-off.
I know,
dude. You're like, if he had just let Severo do his thing,
you can't put that kind of moral question in front of me. I would just let the book handle that.
It's a very tricky one, but I'll give my answer. No, like, tee it up.
Yeah.
I honestly think, like, his path toward doing something great and becoming, like, maybe the Red God. That kind of sounds like something he would do at the end. But it's one of those things is he has to. Because if he changes in any of those moments, the person that he's on a trajectory to become could easily become worse than the person that he's trying to unseat, like the society that he's trying to unseat. So even though people are going to sacrifice along the way, that sacrifice only means something. Yeah, in the moment, it's terrible. They lose their lives. Like, the battles are horrible and horrific, and he even mentions that it's just chaos and carnage the whole time. But if he takes that shortcut, or if he starts to change in that way, then all of that sacrifice up to that point and past it is worthless. That's my personal opinion.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it makes sense too. What is this? The French Revolution, where this happens, where the revolutionaries become like try to make themselves kings pretty much, and then they find themselves at the guillotine. Like, anyways, after with the reign of terror, like this happens, and I think that's why they put it in these stories, because it's so real, and it's such a possibility for people to take the wrong path and become be the hero long enough to see you become the villain. You know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it happens.
A little
in a lot of stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this. Okay, there's one reaction we skipped just briefly past that I want to get in here. I'm so sorry about the size of these. I wish I could fix it. Austin said, what was your reaction to finding out he was locked in a box for 9 months?
Okay.
Not just a box either.
It was a box under the table.
His kitchen table.
I was trying to understand what this looked like in my head. Okay. I was like, because he talked about like it raising up and everything, but was it raising up? Maybe it rose up to the top of the table, or maybe he was just imagining it because he was just like in a. No, he probably rose up like until he was at the top of the table.
You never know.
They ate around him, right? Because there was Cassius that was there, and
I think the whole concept is crazy. Like, you'd have to have life support in there and stuff, but it's his moments of going back through things is just.
It is the worst form of torture.
It's got to be.
Because they're not even feeding him, because they've got tubes stuck in him.
Yep.
Like, he's literally not seeing anyone for months and months. Like,
yeah, he's complete isolation for 9 months.
Yeah. I do admit, like, that moment, I was like, that was just like a disgusting moment in the book. Yeah. I hated.
Was it worse though than what was it? Who was it that was imprisoned with him?
Oh, that's also pretty bad. It was Victra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that worse?
Where she has the sound
just constant.
Oh,
because she was in there for almost the same amount of time.
I don't know what's worse. I don't know.
I feel both would drive you pretty crazy, I guess. I think I would do better with being all by myself forever than constant noise. You'd be like in so much excruciating mental pain.
Oh gosh. I have no idea.
I wonder if he knew that Darrow was dealing with so many skeletons in his own closet. He's like, he just needs to be tormented by his own thoughts for a while.
Oh gosh. Okay, but this leads to another good question for you, okay?
I'm ready.
So we've got the Jackal. So the Jackal first appears in the first book, right? And he's the other Reaper, the other guy that all the proctors are trying to get to win this game. And I actually loved the whole idea of the Jackal there.
Yeah.
But were you... So I guess I'll tee it up with I thought. I was not impressed with the Jackal when I met him in Red Rising. Once you meet him, and... Okay, he has that crazy moment where he cuts his own hand off. Okay, nuts. But after that, though, like he just didn't really seem like this is the Jackal, and he's so smart and brilliant, and like he just kind of seemed like an entitled teenager that was a little bit crazy. But then by the time you get to the third book, it was the box moment, and all of the other moments leading throughout the rest of Morning Star, where you realize that the Jackal's the real deal.
I do feel like I got that impression from Red Rising. Like I feel like the instant they talk about his backstory, he instantly becomes like a win at all costs, take no prisoners sort of person. Because that's one of those things where you're like, he is going to do anything to survive. Oh man, in Morning Star they explain kind of what happened in the cave. And I was shocked because originally I was like, okay, you know, like people were dying, probably died in the rock fall, and like. I mean, they ate them. That's insane. That's horrible. But
awful.
Then in Morning Star, you realize they killed people to eat them.
Oh, I know.
And you're like, that is horrifying.
Yep.
On so many levels. And he is a psychopath.
Oh, psycho. Absolutely psycho.
But he's like one of those psychopaths that's like constantly thinking about, I will win. Like everything is a game. Everything is a challenge.
Yes.
It's got to be how he was raised.
You're totally going the direction what I wanted to as well. And before I move on here, I've got to mention we've got Two to Ramble in the chat here.
Welcome, folks.
Welcome to Two to Ramble.
There's a ton of awesome people. We got Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews. Join us right from the beginning. Some good questions. Mario, Austin, Carson, thanks for joining in. Honestly, it's been a freaking blast.
I know. Tutor Ramble, don't miss our shout out of you in the beginning.
Yeah.
We watched your video on Red Rising.
You'll have to come back for it.
I know, you got to see it. We kind of throw down on Richard a little bit, but for his 6-star rating.
Well, I don't know who's here to comment. It could be Richard, it could be Austin.
It's got to be Austin, right?
He could go either way.
If it's both, I love it. I'll take it. I'm big fans of those guys.
No, seriously, thanks. And Hayden, we may take you up on that for the comment work.
Yeah, that's right. Hayden Dilly, he's been on the show with us before.
Yes, we talked about Dragonsteel.
Big fans of Hayden Dilly.
Yep.
So he's our guy. But I want to keep going with that Jackal moment because you kind of referenced this. Probably one of my favorite ways to explain the Jackal was when they started discussing him and saying it was Mustang talking about him. It's like, you don't understand. When he was a kid, he would make puzzles, make a maze for me to solve.
Yeah.
And then he would be like, good job, and be all happy about it. And then he would she would find him like punishing himself in his room, just so angry and like furious that he couldn't beat her. And like, that's when I just kind of realized like, this guy's a lunatic.
Yeah, absolutely insane, and feels like raised that way. But,
yeah. Would you say he's one of the best villains you've ever read?
Oh man,
I know that's kind of to throw you right under the bus.
I'd put him in that group. I don't know if he's the absolute best villain I've ever read.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit, I don't want to say not as creative, but it's not as limited, maybe I should say. Like when you have the Jackal, he could literally just do anything. He could just murder people, murder his own staff. He makes me think of Fade Routha, actually.
Oh yeah, he kind of does remind me of that.
Making the connections over here.
Well, because
he's
the
like
movie Fade Routha though.
The movie, yeah.
Because
Austin Butler. He reminds me of Austin Butler.
Yeah, because the book
Routha.
Fade Routha doesn't feel as crazy as the movie one did.
Honestly, Austin Butler killed that. I don't know if he won any awards for that, but he should have.
He should have.
Because he was insane. And that's like what you kind of get
come
that
out this
vibe.
year? Yeah, we won't find out until like for another several months if he gets
Honestly,
awards.
I have no idea when these award shows are. But he should win one. And it just feels like that same vibe of like, I honestly don't care about life, about anyone around me. Like, I have my goal and I will get it at all costs. Like, he would kill anyone. And you think about the Jackal, like, yeah, siblings, parents, doesn't even matter.
Oh, dude, that is such a cool connection. I remember watching Fade Routha, and I was just thinking, this guy is just a complete sicko. And he plays it so well. I feel like, this is a big statement, but I feel like I have not seen someone perform that well since Heath Ledger played the Joker. Which he was also completely psychotic.
Yeah. Those psychotic villains, man. So you got the Joker, you got Fade Routha, and you got now the Jackal.
The Jackal, dude. I think he
didn't
played
even
well.
like the name.
He didn't. Wait, I thought it was his dad didn't like the name. He pulled onto it, didn't he?
I don't know. I thought in the book he was like, yeah, it's kind of unfortunate how names spread.
Yeah, that's right.
But at least in that room when they were talking. But yeah, I think some of the bigger twists for me, the biggest twist, if I was to rank them, I would say the 9 months in the box blew me away because they started.
What are you ranking? Sorry,
just the craziest moments. Like the biggest twists, I would say.
Yep.
The 9 months in the box has got to be on that list. Other thing for me was the scene, like the double cross or whatever they call it, like the triple twist with Severo and Cassius.
At the very end of the book,
blew me away.
Absolutely crazy.
I didn't see it coming. I was like, no way, he let him down. But then,
we have to talk through this because I watched this and I was angry during this part of the book. I was so mad at Cassius.
Yeah.
I don't know if you felt the same way. Like I was just like, this was another lunchtime read, and I was just like pacing, and I was just like, this is probably the most disgusting character of all time. I was just so mad at Cassius for this.
I was mad too. I was looking for a lost disc.
Yeah,
playing disc golf while I was reading that part, and I'm like, oh man.
Yeah. That's the best. It's just because one of those moments where I thought that Cassius had that moment with Severo because Severo hangs himself for Cassius.
Yeah.
And then he comes in and has this moment where like he's like, oh my gosh, you saved my life. You did this for me. Even though Cassius had killed his dad. Basically forgives him for that.
Yeah.
And
did you forget about the holo? The holographic image?
I did. Dang it.
I forgot too.
I couldn't believe it. I was watching.
It's well written.
It is.
They kind of just slip it in there.
I know. I was waiting for that too because he does that. And there are certain moments in books, and that was one of those moments you're like, I should be watching for this, and then you forget.
It's the second time, though, Cassius has been changed by a hollow. He just needs to keep an eye on those, man, because apparently it changes everything about him.
There's all sorts
Yeah,
of
so that was one of those things for me that I was like completely shocked. But then when it twisted back again, you're like, oh my goodness, it's all a double cross to get to the Sovereign. I was like, wow.
I was trying to make it work in my mind. I'm like, maybe it is a double cross. Maybe it's it. But the whole time he's like, he freaking killed Severo. Like
They had me hook, line, and sinker.
I was so mad. I'm like, I love Severo. You can't kill him twice in like 2 chapters.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. The only thing that didn't throw me off is like they put the tourniquet on his arm. I'm like, they're gonna cut his hand off. And then they made it seem like a surprise, like a chapter later when they cut his hand off. I'm like, yeah, why didn't they put the tourniquet on? They did that a while ago. And it makes sense, honestly, but
because the Jackal's own hand was cut off too.
That honestly feels like payback.
Yeah,
but it makes a little bit of sense for such a powerful prisoner. You're like, this could go south.
Yeah.
Let's be smart about this. Yeah, makes sense to me.
Yeah, there was a little bit of risk there too, though, because you saw like, yes, they used Severo's gun to like perform the execution on him.
Yeah.
How in the world would you know that they're gonna that the Jackal is going to be so like pious that he's going to use Severo's gun to perform the execution, and then it like doesn't work? Oh, that was one part I wasn't quite buying. Like,
did it not work? I thought he just didn't shoot him. I thought that was the moment that they all pounced.
Maybe they
shot each other.
Maybe.
Because I do think that would be way too convenient.
I know. That's how I read it.
Like,
but
you're not planning that far in advance, especially with a psychopath like Jackal. There's no way you know what he's gonna do.
Well, and this is the part where Pierce Brown's brilliance of writing that I really liked in his book. I didn't like it at first because it makes the book confusing, but he has a skill to make it so not only are the characters left in the dark of what the plan is, the readers are left in the dark. And it's first person. Like, you're supposed to hear everything he's talking about, everything he's thinking.
I thought I knew what was going on.
Thought I knew what was happening. And like that ending is a big part where you have that happen. It happens again, or not again, but first place where I notice it happens is in the very first book when he takes the grav boots from Fitchner, and then he goes through the fight in the sky. Like, how does he get out of this?
He got me with that one.
Because you're like, why are there boots?
But he laid all the clues, and when it happens, and you're like, oh man, got me.
Oh yeah,
but they did it right. Like, he's not bending too many rules. He's like, I laid the path. Now I just threw you off.
What does Wit say? Is like a good storytelling is great because it's basically just about cheating or something like that.
That sounds exactly like something Wit would say.
Something like that. And that is such an applicable quote for this story because it's like cheating. Like, yes, of course you wouldn't have known because he didn't tell you anything about it, but he gave you enough clues that like you thought you could have maybe figured it out, but there's no way.
Also, you were totally right. Austin says the gun he did shoot and it blew up in his face.
So
it must have been a contingency plan, he says. So congratulations, you remember much better than I did.
It's because I was so blown away by the moment.
Oh, okay. How long have we been on this trip?
I know. No, but I don't know. It was just one of those moments where I was just wasn't quite buying that. But
yeah. Well, I'll give you another moment then. This one comes from Austin again in the chat.
Okay.
He says, do you agree with Darrow's decision to I'm so sorry about the size. Every time. Do you agree with Darrow's decision to sacrifice the sons in the rim and destroy the docks?
Oh, dude, I don't know about that. That was one I was really torn about. So I'm gonna say no, and it's probably the wrong answer because I don't know if they could have won the war with it, but like, I can't imagine sacrificing my own people to make a decision. Like, it's just too brutal for me.
I think there's two pieces of it.
He could have
blowing up the docks.
Yeah,
which I hated.
You hated that more than giving up his own people?
I hated it. I don't know if I hated it more.
Yeah.
And then I also really, really hated the fact that he's like, I'll give you all the suns on your planets, whatever, and like you can do with them whatever you need to. You're like, both of those things were just absolutely painful.
Yeah.
Because the one is like, if we blow up those docks and we pretend like it was the Jackal, like now we can get them on our side. But it's a huge risk. It's a blatant lie, and I just feel like straight up murder at that point. They had already won. There has to have been a better way, and that hurt me.
Yeah, the docks. That one. Yeah, I just wonder, there has to be another way for some of these things. Like maybe the docks. I almost understand the docks one more because I'm like, it's war. They're an enemy and they're trying to ruin their way of like.
That's their most valuable possession. Sets them back, what, 200 years or something?
Something like that.
Pain.
I mean, maybe we'll understand it more in the following books, right?
Think of all the people that were living there. Like, just because it's war doesn't mean
no, you're
civilians.
Right. You're 100% right, dude. I don't know, but that's
it was a gamble, Leon. Absolutely.
Yes.
That's one of those things. So actually, Hayden disagreed with a statement before.
Really?
Call out. He says, "This is one of my problems with the series. There are several times when you get surprised, but it's with information you never got. I love that Sanderson at least usually gives you all the pieces. I want to know if there's a specific example you're thinking of, Hayden, where it's like you were surprised with information you didn't have. And maybe I'm not thinking well, but I feel like a lot of the ones that we had mentioned, there were at least little clues. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. Probably
no,
because Hayden knows more about books
Hayden's
than I
right.
do.
Hayden's totally right. I felt that same way in the book too. But there were many times he usually goes back and explains it. But there are very many times when he would tell you something that like hints at something else, and you're like, okay, did that even make sense? What he just said, and then later it makes more sense. A really good example that is not like it wasn't actually confusing, but like it kind of was, is with that very first statement of them saying like they let the loved ones do it to pull the legs, and you're like, wow, that's kind of brutal. Don't understand why that happens or why the loved ones would do that. But then you get to the part where he has to where EO gets hung, and he says the same phrase. They let the loved ones do it to end the chapter. Oh man! What a moment!
That multiple times.
Yep.
And it's every time they do it, you're like,
would even end that way, right? With the Mustang pulling the legs of
yeah. That's one of the bigger ones. You're like, no one came up.
Yep, no one, which was crazy moment after all of that. Oh my goodness!
No one came. You're like, well, That's how he lived his life, though.
I will say, I'm gonna say, I will say that I am so happy that they killed off the Jackal, because it would have been very annoying to have that villain continue longer and longer and just
you can't keep the same villain into multiple series.
Yes.
Like, I can understand that he's like the big backbone of this series and the conflict there, but if they had kept like the same Darrow versus the Jackal for another series, that would have been pretty painful.
You're telling me you don't think Darth Sidious...
If he comes back, I'm going to be...
You don't think Darth Sidious should have come back then, huh? Is that what you're telling me?
We should probably do another episode.
I know.
About Star Wars in general. But I think
that villain worked. Let's bring him back.
What about Taravangian?
Well,
Hayden brings up Taravangian as one of the all-time villains.
Wow. I'm going to push it off for now because I don't want to have major spoilers for that series. Well, the
spoiler we'll leave you with is that he is an interesting character.
Yes.
You should pay attention to.
Yes. Yeah. Love that series.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. You mentioned, my other big question. I've asked you a couple of them, but I think this is my favorite one.
Okay.
Do you think the Red Rising eventual movie franchise will be better than Star Wars?
Wow. Here's my thing, okay? I loved Star Wars growing up, and I was a big fan of the originals. I even liked the prequels, everyone. I liked them. It's because I grew up with those. And seeing Star Wars Episode 1, probably watched it 100 times when I was a kid. Loved it.
That's a lot.
I know. It wasn't 100 times. But with these newer ones, I just felt like there was just such a huge fan base of Star Wars fans that were very, very picky about the movies. And I wasn't as picky because I was just excited to see more Star Wars movies. And I thought they did have some good storylines.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It just kind of put a sour taste in it. And so I couldn't really enjoy the movies because so many people were hating on it. Then there were some things that I didn't even really like about it anyways either. And so whole thing of Star Wars is just kind of like now. Like the originals are fine. I think Red Rising could be incredible. Like, I think it's going to be so good. And I think it's going to be better as a TV series. And I think that's what it's being talked about, being pushed as a TV series, which all good shows and media these days, it feels like you have to put in a TV show so it's long enough, but to cover all of it.
I want to go movies.
You want to go movies?
I really want to go movies. The reason for that is I think if I was to cast it out across an entire franchise, which I think they should, the like side stories that they could tell would be so awesome. I think that's so cool. And the fact that it's a contemporary writer could mean that you could get them involved and it could be just so much better for that. I think there's a way to do it. I think first Sanderson's going to show us that way, show us the way to make a good movie with an author that's not all messed up.
This is the way.
It's not that way. Trust me, the Mandalorian way is not that way. But I do think they'll show us how to do a really good... Sanderson's going to show us how to do a really good movie. And then Pierce Brown's going to do the same thing with Red Rising, but turn it into a bigger franchise. But like, think about the side story you could tell about Orion.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be so exciting and so cool. Like, the transition from like her education to then becoming the captain in this crazy twist of fate, and then now becomes a pirate when Darrow gets captured. I'm like, that's like one sentence in this book. I'm like, man, you can make an entire series, side series, alongside this, I don't know, 4 or 5 movies set.
So you think it has potential to be way better?
Absolutely. I think it has potential to be better than Star Wars. I think from an epic standpoint, and because we get to cheat a little bit, and we have a lot more access to technology and like all the different things that we have at our fingertips in movies today, gives us a little bit of the upper hand. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it's going to be like, you know, par for par better, but I think it could be grander by far.
Yeah.
Because of what we have now. I think like Dune. Like Dune, they were able to do just some tremendous things because of the new capabilities we have.
Yep.
I think continuing that be so awesome.
And it would be really cool too because it's based in our own solar system, right? Which is very cool. I want to see lots of moments with... I kept on thinking about the book where they're meeting on the moon of Jupiter.
Oh.
And then they're talking about Jupiter just hanging out in the background. Can you imagine what that looks like?
And gravity's changing all over the place.
I know.
And they mention it too. They're not like ignoring the fact that it's weird.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. And that's what I love about these books. And that's what's cool about this book is, yes, it's a sci-fi book, but like, so it takes all the sci-fi stuff. It's starting to take real physics, real ideas and things like that, but it feels like a sci-fi fantasy book.
Yeah.
Because it's more about like the story than like most sci-fi books just feel like they're more about the philosophy of things and things like that. In my opinion. I don't know if you felt the same way. But
no, I agree. I think that makes sense.
Yeah. So
I have a question came in from, I think, let me check. Yeah, it's Austin. Austin's in here. So a fan. But Austin says, what is your least favorite moment?
Okay. I will also say that there's wait, Tudor Ramble said the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, Austin. I thought you said Austin.
Austin from Tudor
It's
Ramble.
the other Austin that you were talking about.
Yeah, there are 2 Austins.
Austin from Tudor Ramble. Okay.
Yes,
Love it.
Austin from Tudor Ramble.
My least favorite moment. Oh man. You know, that's really hard because I really liked this book. I'm like struggling to think of anything that I disliked. Do you have anything right off the mind?
Right off the top of my head.
What is it?
Absolutely.
What?
The moment he realizes that he would have been a father with EO. I hated it.
Really?
I hated every second of that.
Oh yeah. I was thinking about Mustang when you said that.
It was miserable.
Oh,
I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
You know what?
They were going to have a kid. They had a crib for the kid. I was like, if there was a moment that I was going to shed a tear in this book, I had to take a second. It hurt, man. I did not like that at all. I could have left that out the book entirely, and I would probably been happier for it. Probably because it's so emotional for me, but it's like, that was painful.
I will probably have to agree with that, and it's such a cop-out answer because I don't have my own, but like I agree with you.
Immediate. I hated that.
Well, it's because I've completely forgot about that moment. But here's the thing: that moment was so hard because I was even denial at that moment. I was like, no. I'm like, this guy, like, there's no way that he intended for that to happen and those to be the words during that first book. You know, I don't know if you thought the same thing. But then as I was pouring through it and like running over it in my mind, I had to give it to him. I'm like, you know what? He probably did intend it for it to be that for the beginning. And the way that she reacted and everything, I'm like, this is awful, man.
That hurt me. It just hurt me. It's not a good moment.
I know. Well, I mean, the other opposite side of it, though, that's a great moment, is when Mustang reveals that she has a child.
What a turnaround.
What a cool way to end the book.
It was pretty cool.
I loved it. It was so cool because you get that moment of like, oh yeah, he was in the cage for 9 months. Pregnant for 9 months. She's like, yeah, I pieced out for 9 months and didn't let anyone know. And like, didn't even let you know, which was also a little bit heart wrenching too, you know? She's like, I had to figure out if you were someone who could be trusted again. Like, I didn't know. I'm like, brutal. So
yep. It's one of those things. You're like, if you're, you got to be more like ready for all of these things as they happen in the book. Otherwise you're just like, I got to take a break.
Oh yeah, yeah. I just gotta stop. There is a lot of moments like that.
A callback to something we talked about earlier. Matt's fantasy books.
You gotta call that out.
I have
Welcome,
to call it out.
Matt's fantasy book
Also,
reviews.
saw your tweet. I don't know if it was today. It might have been a couple of days ago. But he mentioned like he calls out these lesser known books, and all of a sudden they like skyrocket on the to be read.
Wow!
On Goodreads. Like how cool is that?
That is super cool.
But the reason he can do that, I have just learned from his comment. Not that you guys can read it, but is the fact he says he reads 160 pages a day, 100 plus big books a year, and remembers them all, but he doesn't watch any TV.
Dude, that's a good way to do it.
That's incredible. 160 pages a day. Hold on.
Wow. So you said you're putting the kids to bed though. So
58,000 pages, which he says 100 plus books, 580 page books. Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And is that physical reading? Or are you listening to these? I have to know.
No, it has to be
I'm
physical
obviously
reading.
doing this wrong.
Has to be
He does
physical.
say pages. He wouldn't be pages.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
pages
that's what I'm
listening
saying. Well,
That's
the
incredible.
Thing,
That's
is like
amazing.
that's impressive that he doesn't watch any TV, because that's kind of the thing I do with my wife. I'm like, well, like when I watch TV, it's usually with her, and that's the only time I watch it. But it also takes away my time to read books because like I'm watching TV with my wife. So
she's absolutely right. No woman would ever do that. You better hope so. It hurt me. That part hurt me. So
do
bad.
what with the Mustang
sacrificing
thing?
her life when she was pregnant. No.
Oh,
no.
the EO thing.
No.
Yes. Yeah, I kind of wonder about that too. But he mentions that though, that doesn't he get kind of upset with her at that moment too? He's thinking in the book, he's like, how could she sacrifice my child
like,
for this moment too? And
blah, one of those things.
yeah,
I'm still curious
it's rough.
about
It's a rough moment.
whether Matt is. So he's reading 160 pages. What am I doing?
Yeah.
Obviously not reading.
That's what I'm saying. You need practice when you're reading. You got to keep practice reading.
You got to get into that habit and have time scheduled for it. And we're just going to make a bunch of assumptions about what Matt does. But that he takes the time, schedules it out, and he knows that that's reading time. And like, how wholesome. I love that.
I love that. I love that too. Okay. Anything else? So we haven't talked, you and I, about this third book at all, right? About what we thought about it. Like we did a little bit here, but there are any other parts in that book that we're missing? There's one part that sticks out to me.
Go ahead.
Is when they're going to Ragnar's homeworld, and they're able to see it feels like an ice world because they're in the caps of Mars and things like that, polar.
Yes.
And that's
a Star Wars-esque scene.
It was so cool. It was the first moment of the book that I'm like, this is awesome world building.
That's Star Wars. That was one of the. I even wrote that down. The ice world. So cool.
Yo, how cool. They have, and it really goes into
the Valkyrie. Come on.
Yeah. And it goes into all
Ragnar.
of the different creations that the carvers are making, and they're just putting them into the world. And
just to terrorize
it makes it feel like fantasy, but not, because they're like creating these animals and everything. It makes you just wonder what our future is going to be like. And I don't know, like you could really have like griffins and
the Carver whole situation, even from the beginning, really was very dystopian. You're just like, oh man, that's too scary.
It is scary, and it's cool. And so they just have this whole world where like Ragnar's people that are just like super tough. And this was super interesting. So right from the beginning of Red Rising, and I thought this with Ragnar's people too, there's that big theme in Dune where they're like, okay, the Fremen are people who are hardened, and since they've lived in such a hard world, then they're able to
and they're the strongest
become the strongest, which is fascinating. So I'm like, oh, it's interesting that they've created this system of people, class system.
Yeah.
But little did they know, they're also creating a super strong and resilient people, because that could overthrow them. Because
okay, let me hit you with this parallel then.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Sidakar were strongest because they were in a prison made by the society to make them strong.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Very similar to the Stained.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
The Fremen were strong because they were oppressed in a mining colony. They were mining the desert sand, and that made them strong. Who ends up overthrowing the society in this? The Reds, who were made strong because they were oppressed in a mining colony.
Interesting.
Come on.
Very similar.
That's one of my better parallels, I think, that I've ever discovered.
Yeah. Well, you could say that so it's just, you're saying the mining colony is the factor, or
I'm saying the oppressive society,
because the
tried
Stained
to
were
create
also
the strongest, but then ended up accidentally creating the strongest by oppressing them. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Accidentally.
Yep. And they did this.
It's not perfect, but it's
I think it's
pretty
great.
good.
Well, and it's interesting too, because this is one of the interesting themes that I took from the first book, and I think about it a lot, is a lot of people talk about how society can become soft over the years without any war and hardship and things like that. And they say that we're going through this in our world, and how people don't work as hard as they used to because they've never known hardship.
Yep.
And in this Red Rising directly grabs from that idea and says, our gold society is not going to go down that path, and we're going to literally put you in an institute that like creates hardship and hard problems for you. So you can become like a superhuman or super smart and like all these crazy experiences. I love the way that and I love the way I think that I think Pierce Brown says it at the very beginning of his book. He kind of gives a summary of like the first 2 books at the very beginning of Morningstar. And he says it's basically a way for the bratty rich kid to be able to learn how to be the best warriors in the universe.
The most calloused, honestly, it feels like.
Yeah.
Think about what they have to go through.
Oh, yeah.
But it's so calculated. One of the things that I think is interesting is that he tries to break society out of that constant cycle of just repeating we're the strongest, we're the best, and then someone rises up and takes over. So they use the institute, they use the academy to be like, now you realize how fine of a line you walk as leaders of the society, and how easy it would be for people to rise up, and how to recognize that, and how to combat that, and how to, build around it. So they're like very aware of the downfall. It's funny, they even mention like the downfall of
of America States. And the Romans and
they do a lot of callbacks to history, which is our future, which I thought was hilarious.
I love that. I think that's fun.
I think they did a good job of it. But I think there's some cool interesting. Would you have wanted to see? We talked about the Obsidians, obviously, on their world and how awesome it was. Carson says, I just want more of that for the other colors like we got for the reds. I'm curious if we'll get some of that in the tetralogy, like learning more about what the other cultures,
more world building for the reds
were. Well, not just the reds. I think he's saying like we got for the reds. He wants more of that for the other colors. So
sorry, I missed the question.
I'm curious if that's like, I mean, some of them seem to have absolutely brutal stories. So I don't know how deep we can get into all of them, but it's like, you don't really learn about the blues. Like, they're brilliant, but how does that happen?
What is their life like?
What is their training like? Yeah, you don't get to see as much. An Orion backstory would be pretty cool.
I know.
Just saying. Yeah. I think that'd be fun.
Like you said, there's a lot of potential for really cool side stories in this series. So love that comment. Anything else that you liked about that third book that we're forgetting here, or any of the other books?
I think I want to rate the series.
Yes.
I think it's time.
We need to rate the series. First, we need to go through and say, order your books. What are your favorite books?
And ordering. That could be fun. Okay, so I want to do this, but I also want anyone who's read the series, who's in the chat right now, specifically those people who have already liked the video.
Yep.
Just saying. But if you haven't liked the video yet, I mean, come on. But,
liked it, shared it, subscribed.
Sure, all those things.
All the things.
But I do think I want to see what other people's ratings and like the orderings of the books are.
Yeah.
I'm not going to look at it for a second. I'll try my best to kind of cover it up. I would say I thought Red Rising was number 1 for me.
Yep.
And then I would probably put
I don't know either.
The prep work needed to be stronger on this one. I'm going to put the third book and then the second book.
Yep.
I think that's going to be my 1, 3, 2.
Why is that? Give me some explanation here.
Red Rising was, in my opinion, a legendary book.
Yeah.
Okay. It really set the stage for a combination. This was mentioned right at the beginning. A combination of the Hunger Games and Star Wars, all these really cool storylines. I think it just did such a clean job of bringing those together with a awesome plot line and awesome like potential for conflict. It was just great. I loved a lot of the story there. So I put that one first because the introduction to it was so powerful to me.
Yep.
I put 3 next because, and I honestly have to put it 2, there was too much hype for it. And people just hyped me up too much. And I ended up thinking, was this really?
For book number 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it better? I ended up scoring it, I think, a full point. If you haven't seen the review, you go watch that. But I think I ended up scoring like a full point lower than the first book. And then the third book, I think, did redeem a lot of that because it cleared up a lot of things. And the twists in the third book got me, man.
That was so good.
And the introduction of like Ragnar's homeworld was, I was like, I'm watching Star Wars as I read this.
Yeah.
Blew my mind. So yeah, I'm going to say 1, 3, 2.
I am a 100% in agreement. That's how I thought of it too. There were moments in 2 that were like absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Especially the very first scene where he's trying to decide if he should blow up the whole like Council of Golds.
Yeah.
What a moment, dude. I knew he wasn't going to do it because Darrow's still going to be around. There's like another book. but he's so convincing up to the last moment. You're like, he might actually do it.
He might pull the trigger. Who knows?
And then it ends with the whole Fitchner thing. But it's just so fast for me. It was just such a fast book. I just felt like it was just such a blur for me. But that third book, especially the whole relationship with Roke, was just so hard.
We didn't even talk about Roke.
I know, Roke.
What a dynamic character.
Oh,
in an interesting way.
I was kind of upset with the Roke moment for a while. I mean, of course,
the whole
who
Roke
was not
character.
Yeah, who was not upset with that? But I was the whole time. I was like, yeah, Pierce Brown, I get it. Like, this is a great twist in a story, but I don't know if I'm buying this.
I don't buy the catastrophic betrayal.
Yeah,
it's too much.
He goes from one person that is like such a great friend and person to a huge turn on him. Like,
and people can break, people's spirits can break completely. And maybe when Quinn died, that was something that happened to him. But it's still like that level of betrayal. You think about like Cassius and Severo had more to fight about than that.
Yep.
And they didn't even go to those lengths. Like it was catastrophic and just terrible.
Although I would say I did buy it by the end. With his like speech and like him like just saying him killing himself on his own ship over it, I was like, you know what? I think I buy it now. Like what? Maybe it was that and the moment when he's just standing there saying like, it doesn't matter, Darrow. Like I am here to like keep society going as it is. I made a promise and you made that same promise. You're the one betraying, and that was such a crazy moment. Like I just loved that. So the whole Roke thing was amazing. The whole Jackal thing was amazing. Him coming back out of being stuck in prison. The whole world of Ragnar was amazing. Mustang. Dude, I love the third book.
They have to do movies.
Yeah.
I can't get away from the fact they just have to do movies.
Oh, they have to.
They'd be so good.
I would be fine with a TV show though too. Come on.
It'd have to be a very expensive TV show for me to be okay with it.
Oh yeah, for sure. So before we get into final rating of the series, what is your rating of book 3?
Book 3, I'm going to give an 8.9.
Wow. Wait, what did you give the other one? The book 2?
8.6 or 8.7?
Yeah, something like that. I'm going to put you on the spot.
I know, it's a spoiler for the last book. We need to write these down.
Yeah.
We need to build a whole review site.
I know. Two to Ramble has been talking about trying to do that. So maybe they'll do it for us.
Maybe they will. We could just use it. One of those. I do think it was higher than 2. But it still wasn't like I put some epic books into the 9s and it was almost there. I don't know. People are not going to love that, but 8.9 is going to be my rating. It was just on the cusp of a 9 for me.
Yeah. Wow. For me, I will probably give this one a 9.2.
Okay.
Yeah. So look at that. I'm doing decimals again.
What
is wrong with me?
I'm so proud of you.
It was an accident. But I thought it was really good. I think it was really well written for all the things we were talking about. Yeah. And I just loved them. Series as a whole, this is probably one of my most favorite series of all time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This is one of those things where it might change over time because it's so hard. This happened with me with the Mistborn books. That was my favorite series of all time. Then I read The Way of Kings and the Stormlight Archive. And as I was reading through them, I'm like, but I love Mistborn. How could I say that this is better than Mistborn? But eventually it became better. Yeah. This one feels that same way. I'm like, I can't say it's better than the Stormlight Archive because I love those books. And Stormlight Archive, I think, is still better in my mind. But I love these books. It is pretty close in my mind. So series as a whole, probably give it 9.5.
Dang it. That's the exact same rating I was going to give it, a 9.5. Wow. I think the power and majesty of the world were just too powerful. The whole thing, 9.5 for the series, for sure. High 9s means it's a high recommend from us.
Oh, yeah.
From next chapter, if you're going to want to read any book about sci-fi and world building like this, Red Rising is the one to dive into.
This is the kind of books that if you are trying to get your friends back into reading again, I know there's a lot of people who say, I need to get back into reading. This is one that will get them right into it.
Honestly.
No.
They're not too long.
And they're so fast paced, like they'll want to keep reading. So I love that. I love finding books like that. So this is one of those series that could get them going. So.
I think that's a solid, and there's some interesting comments here about ratings, and we have 231.
Look at all these people who do not put number 1 first.
Hayden is the only one who agrees with us having 2 at the end. So at least we won't be burned at the stake alone.
That's crazy. Yeah, like everyone said, they all love number 2 a lot more than 1. Nobody put number 1 as number 1. So
the world gets bigger. We have to catch up on Oathbringer and Rhythm of War before Wind and Truth. I don't have time to read an entire tetralogy. I'm not Matt's book reviews. I can't read 100 books in a year.
That's amazing. I want to get there. That is a goal.
Honestly, Matt, we need to interview someday and just figure out how you do that. That's absolutely incredible. Well, I also am very curious, now that this is our first live stream, what you guys thought about it, whether it's worth continuing for certain books, for all the books we read. Is it more fun? Is it more interesting? Is it more rambly? But hey, that's not a bad thing.
We had fun. It's a book club, okay?
It is. Welcome to the book club.
I know.
Thanks for joining us.
We want to do this again. We are going to be reading Oathbringer next.
Yep.
We'll let you know on the exact time on when we'll be doing the live stream and everything, but it'll probably be in a few weeks from now because we can give us time to read the book. We also may do it in more than one part. We'll also need to discuss that.
Let us know your thoughts. We're kind of on the fence because we have done part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4 for the other books. So, hey, let us know. Give us your thoughts. We're excited to hear them. We're excited to see you more on the channel. Comment on any of the videos you can. We try to respond to as many as we can. We love having you subscribed and participating. This is just literally the best part of having the channel.